I am heavy bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No! Inner
resources.
life, friends, is boring. We must not say so.
This is Andrew Whitstep, and you are listening to Heavy Board, and we're recording this on October 25th, 2025. My guest today is the author Heather Colley. Heather has penned her debut novel titled The Gilded Butterfly Effect, and it is out just this year in October of 2025. A novel that centers around campus life, a very long tradition in literature. Heather's a PhD student in literature at Oxford University, though she's American, listeners, a graduate of the University of Michigan. Her fiction and academic work has been awarded by the Oxford Review of Books and the Transatlantic Studies Association, among others. And she is among one of the debut authors we've had on this show that you should look out for in the future, dear listeners. Heather Colley, thank you so much for coming on Heavy Board.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to chat about my book.
Of course. And the question we always start this off with, Heather, to all artists and writers that come on the show, we like to start with, what was your childhood like? Where did you grow
Oh,
up?
that's great.
What
Okay,
did your
yeah,
parents do? How did these early years start to form you in this way?
sure. I grew up in Westchester, New York, which is sort of suburbia just outside Manhattan. And I went to sort of just a normal public school, and I kind of always gravitated towards humanities. Actually, that's putting it lightly. I was really bad at math and science, so I just went with what I was better at. Um, And then I went to Michigan for undergrad. I spent a year when I was a junior at Oxford, which made me want to go back eventually. So I got my master's in Scotland, then eventually went back to Oxford for English literature for my PhD, which I'm finishing up now. Um, yeah.
Um, Growing up in New York, basically the suburbs
Yeah.
of, the biggest city in America here,
Yeah.
what did your parents do?
My dad was in corporate communications. He started at IBM, and my mom actually worked for my school. She helped with fundraising for my school. Um, so I grew up in sort of a pretty classic American small suburb where it was very tight knit community. And yeah, I mean, I always at that age, even then, it was always reading. I wasn't really writing until high school, but I, like a lot of writers, just loved reading and read
Yeah.
everything that I could, and always loved that part of school. That was the bit that I always really enjoyed.
Yeah, the only reason we ask that question, and I
Mm.
get, we don't want to dox our parents and all that stuff.
I don't
They don't want
know.
letters or anything. And that we usually that hasn't happened so far in this
Yeah, yeah,
podcast, but you never know, right? Yeah, but
sure.
uh we just like because yeah, so it's mostly like a middle class kind of upbringing, upper middle class.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like pretty normal, like public school, really.
Right.
It wasn't, I mean, it was a good,
It's
it's
a
the
good
suburbs
district.
of
Right.
Manhattan. So yeah, of course, it's a good district, and the schools are good in that area.
Right.
But it was pretty, the education was pretty standard. Like, we didn't, it wasn't a sort of one of these prep school environments. Like we sent maybe one or two kids a year to like Ivy League schools. It was very much sort of you make your own way, you find your path, and hope that you succeed. And I thought it was actually a good environment for me.
Yeah, yeah. Especially, are you millennial or you're how old are
I
you?
am I am 27, so I'm
Okay.
98. So I think I'm like the last year of no, I'm the oldest Gen Z year.
Right. You're on the cusp
Yeah,
there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right on the
yeah.
cusp. Yeah. So the reason I asked that question too is I think like most people, pretty much from the baby boomer generation, at least in America onward,
Mm,
most people grew up in like a suburban kind of environment,
yeah.
very safe, good schools, and it's
Mm.
just a breeding ground for writers. So I like to kind of ask about that kind of stuff. You have to have the time, you have
Yeah.
to be able to read and write, and then you have to have the
Right. Yeah.
support, you have to
Yeah,
have,
and the
yeah,
leisure, yeah,
right.
to explore that. And yeah.
So that studying this in its PhD level, I mean, there's a reason before the 20th century, almost everybody that wrote came from a wealthy family because you
Oh my
just
God,
didn't have
yeah,
the
trust
time.
me.
Okay, yeah,
Trust
you
me,
just
yeah. And it's still, especially once you get to that level of academia, it's still very much
yeah,
like you have to, nobody's studying literature to pay the bills, right?
right.
So it still definitely attracts and people that are able to do it definitely
Right.
usually will have some sort of privilege.
Particularly at some of the most prestigious schools in the West, right? Like
Absolutely, yeah.
Oxford, Harvard. Yeah,
Yes. Oh
those,
my
yeah,
God, yeah.
I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the next question going off of that is always,
yeah.
when did reading and writing come into your life?
Reading very early, like as far back as I can remember, I was reading, and I remember children's books, books, and then I remember Harry Potter consuming me. Like I'm sure many people my age can remember that moment. And writing, I probably started. Well, I was always journaling, but I probably self-consciously started writing fiction in high school, maybe like 16, 17, junior year. And then from then on, just continued throughout college and uh, eventually wrote the book, but reading much, much earlier than writing. And that's just always been a standby.
Was it your parents kind of enforcing it before even school age type stuff or
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. My, we, I think just having books around is the, the real thing, just having them
right.
available to pick up. So there were always books around, and I was always able to read, always in the library, getting stacks and stacks of books. And then my parents would read to me, which is fun. And um, I think when you have that example, that's the most important thing. I was a teacher for a year, and one of the biggest things is just not having books in the house. And I think that's one of the most important things that you can do, not even to push them on students, but just having them there for when they want them. I think that is so important.
Yeah, I mean, and then this, yeah, I mean, there's studies on that too. Just having
Mm,
books in the house,
yeah,
statistically, you're probably not going to struggle in school.
right, right.
It's just and not always, of course, there's exceptions, listeners, but yeah,
Mm,
pretty much, the exceptions prove the rule is usually how that
right,
goes.
right.
Although nowadays
Yeah,
people like to pretend that's not the case, but
yes.
yeah, so that's what I'm curious. I think of the same thing. I have a 1-year-old, and like I always think of like what
Oh,
we do. We present books to her as if they're like another toy. Like this
right.
is also a toy that you can engage with, and she's
Yeah,
still too young to really enjoy them on her own. But it's just like yeah, the pictures. When she was
yes.
really young, she was chewing on them. Just it's just another toy. Like here it is. It's a toy amongst all your other ones. It's an option that like you can play with a book the same way you can play with any other kind of trinket made in China or something that they have for these.
That's such a good
Yeah,
perspective, and that makes it fun instead of a chore. By the time they're in school and they're assigned
right.
reading, it's a chore. So if you can make it actually just a natural habit, I think that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Harry Potter already, so I'm going to ask you
Mm,
about that eventually here. I didn't plan to, but I
sure.
always like to when it comes up because
Yeah.
it's important. But we like to ask, what were some of the first writers you were enamored with, or who are your go-to inspirations or idols, in the world of
Okay.
letters?
My idols, Martin Amis, Toni Morrison, Vonnegut, Ford Maddox, Ford Wolf. For more contemporary, I really love Hallie Butler, Ainsley Hogarth, Sayaka Murata. There's so many amazing literary fiction writers doing such amazing things right now. It's Ateza Moshfegh. It's too many to count.
Yeah,
Um, so those are kind of my current idols. Um, the first books that I really remember, Little Women, like Winnie the Pooh.
yeah,
Those are the first books, and I still love these books. I think that adults should read these books as well. Phantom Tollbooth, I remember reading really early on. Um, Things like the Paddington Bear books, and then fantasy. I mean, I was in school during the 2000s when YA fantasy was having a huge, huge moment, and I
right.
was so enamored by that whole thing. Twilight, Harry Potter, the Divergent stuff. I was so into it. John Green. Um, and that really fueled a little bit later. Maybe it was I was 12, 13, 14. I was really
Right.
into those.
All right. Well, there's a lot of things I want to ask you about because of that now too. So you said
Sure.
Vonnegut. What Vonnegut? How did you discover Vonnegut, and how did they become one of your favorites? He's one of mine. Yeah.
Yeah. I probably discovered Vonnegut mm, maybe beginning of college. I don't know how. I think I was just always kind of interested in the greats, so his name kept coming up, so I just checked him out. And um, I any writers that I just feel like you don't need to see who it is on the cover. You pick it up, you know you're reading a Vonnegut book because it's just so idiosyncratic, and you can't even explain why. It's just this ineffable thing. It's obviously it's just voice, and you can't replicate it, and it's natural to them, and that is, I think, like the highest form of craft. Um, and I think he's like humorous without being slapstick, and he's dark as well. And I just always thought he was brilliant. He did things like with writing, with blank space and humor and witticisms that I had never seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. Any favorite book or
I guess what was the first one that I must have read Cat's Cradle first.
that was the
Yeah.
first one my
So I
father
guess
handed
yeah.
me? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great introduction because it's so bizarre. It's sort of post-apocalyptic, and it's just so good. I mean, he just does. And then I remember like the Child Malfadorians all the time, and these things just imprint on your memory because they're so distinct.
Yeah, especially for Vonnegut as ones. I for humor too, and I want to ask. I'm gonna talk to you about humor
Mm,
eventually here, but it just the when I think of like contemporary writers too, and like just kind of his legacy in literature, American letters, Western letters, it's just kind of like,
mm.
is there anybody funnier than him that has like come out? Like think
Yeah.
Breakfast of Champions is the one I
Oh
always
my
say is
God.
my
Yeah.
favorite. I think it might have be
Hmm.
the funniest novel ever written. I'd
Yeah.
hold it up there with a lot of the other ones. I mean,
Absolutely.
has anything come close to how kind of hilarious that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a master of that.
Yeah.
You said Wolf? Anything by
Wolf.
Wolf?
Yeah.
Yeah, anything
Well, I think it's sort of similar. If you could just pick up a random Wolf novel and it's the sentences, you'll know because of, and it's totally different than Vonnegut. It's her voice, but you'll know just because of the sentence structure, the craft, and it's you can't just say stream of consciousness because it's not just that. It's um, she just writes in a way that reminds me a lot of poetry,
yeah.
but of course she's a novelist.
But you know
And
she was
yeah,
quite
I
aware
just
of
think
all
it's
that.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she was very, very literary. She spoke like a million languages and read. She was super into Shakespeare and all of them. But I just think it's just I always just found her to be so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. I always think, especially for I mean, listeners can go listen to this episode. We covered Virginia Woolf very early on in the
Mm,
podcast here. And I just always think about it. It's been years since I read the book To the Lighthouse initially, and it was
yeah.
just that dinner scene in To the Lighthouse. I'll never stop thinking
Yes.
about just the execution, the way it bounces around the table, how
Yeah.
seamless it is with these characters and the
Yeah.
internal monologues, the external dialogue, and then it's just kind of nothing like it. You will never read anything else like it.
No.
Yeah, so that's just great, great. Yeah, I mean, fantastic things. I mean, what else can you say about those types of people, those greats and all of that? We've covered Tessa on the podcast as well. But
Oh
you
yeah.
said
Yeah.
Harry Potter, and you said this, and I wanted to ask this because this is a question I ask a lot of millennials that come on, but I think it applies to Gen Z as well. It applies to the Zoomers. Um, Harry Potter,
Hmm.
how important was that
Yes.
to you, and how did you come to it?
It was really important to me for reading. I think like all of them. I
Hold on, you
read
cut out a minute here. I'm losing the.
my
We can turn off cameras for bandwidth as well if that's The good thing is that Zoom does record all this, so all of that is saved. What we
Oh,
did
cool. Oh,
before,
good.
I have it on the hard drive here.
Oh, great.
And I know it kind of interrupts the flow, but we'll just roll with it. I know we were kind of on the Harry
Yeah.
Potter thing.
Yes, we were on Harry
Uh,
Potter. I remember that.
and again, if this happens again, we'll deal with it. It's not a
Yeah.
big, this is just part of podcasting, as I like to
Okay.
say
Yeah.
to people.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll get it out there. We want to have this recorded and out there. So, where were we? We were on Harry Potter, right? Harry
Yes.
Potter as a millennial and Zoomer now,
Hmm. Yeah.
phenomenon. So,
Yeah.
what got you into the Harry Potter? I know it was kind of already one of the biggest fantasy things in the
Yeah.
history of the world by the time you were even born, but it's
Hmm.
just like, how did that come to be? What drew you in about it? And what you got out of it? Because Harry Potter. The reason I asked this too, one, because I'm curious, because I'm a huge Harry Potter fan,
Hmm.
so important to my generation. But it's
Yeah.
because I feel like whenever people bring it up now, and I think this is partly the fault of kind of the internet culture, there's a
Hmm.
lot of like apologizing for things that you like,
Yeah.
like there's a lot
Yeah.
of like,
Totally.
oh, well,
Completely. Yeah.
especially when you're in the high kind of
Yeah.
literary PhD at Oxford, it's like, you like Harry
Absolutely.
Potter?
Yeah.
How dare you like, so I just wanted to, yeah,
Yeah.
how did you come to it? What do you like about it? What did you get out of it? Why was it so important to you as a young
Yeah.
kid?
Well, my dad loved Harry Potter. And obviously he was, by that point, in his 40s and raising
Hmm.
two small kids. And so he was reading them to my brother. And I think you can tell, like, when you can tell when your parent is into something. I could just tell that he also was actually interested in what he was reading. And he would read ahead, like on his commute, because he thought that they were good books. So I remember listening to them before I was sort of old enough to actually start them. So I had listened to them and I listened to the seventh book, and I kind of have memories of the seventh book, but I didn't really know much about it, just memories of listening to it. Then I went back and read them, and I've probably read them 15 times since
Right.
then, if not more. I feel like they're almost ingrained in my head
Yeah.
now, in the same way that like the Bible is ingrained if you grow up in a religious culture. I just feel like you grow up on something that you read so often, it really just becomes a part of your brain fabric.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you grow up
and
religious? I'm just curious. Did you?
no, no.
No.
So, but I would imagine that it might be sort of, if you grow up reading the Bible, you grow up on the myths of the Bible, and that is how you think about things. And I just read Harry Potter so much that maybe it's analogous, but it was probably like the first fantasy that I read, and then after that, I read everything: Aragon, His Dark Materials, obviously Twilight, all of those books. Yeah, I just devoured those books.
Yeah. It's one of those things, and this is the type of podcast where
Mm,
we don't need definitive answers. We're never going to get
yeah,
definitive answers. We're talking
yeah,
literature, but like I'm always curious, why are we so drawn to these things? And I'm thinking, okay, it
yeah.
has, love stories, love triangles. It has the magical realism kind
Hmm.
of stuff. It has the boarding school kind of aspect, just kind of these kind of
Yep,
classic literary things that are all melded
yep,
into it. And I don't know. I mean, being a millennial, the reason I'm obsessed with Harry Potter and want to always ask writers about it is because, those first two books, when they came to the US, I think the first two were out already. And
yeah,
that was the late 90s, I think right when you were born, like 98,
yeah.
99.
97, I think. The first one came out in the UK in 97, right?
Yeah, and so I think the first
Okay.
US was like 98,
Okay, yeah,
and Chamber of Secrets, it might have been 99 because it was like Chamber of Secrets was right
maybe.
after it. My dad bought both of them for me at the same time, so they were both out at that time, and Azkaban was about to come out. I was so young at that. I was born in 89, so I was, like
Hmm.
8, 9 years old. I couldn't really read a book that size on my own,
Yeah,
so my parents would read it to me, and so I was 8, 9. I wasn't 10 yet. I just remember very distinctly not being able to wait till like my 10th birthday or 11th birthday and you
yeah.
get that letter from the owl.
Oh my God,
I
yeah,
was like, that could happen. That could happen. It was just such an important
absolutely.
part. And
Hmm.
then, well, when I was 17 in high school, graduating, this was around 2007, 2008,
Hmm.
the last book came out, and Harry and
Yeah,
everybody is 17, doing the kind of
yeah,
final thing. So, yeah, I literally, like my generation, particularly my age group and millennials, we grew up with these characters
yeah,
as each book came out. We were about that age. And we kept you were kind of growing with them too. And then, of course, the movies had been out by that point. It became the
yeah.
cultural phenomenon that it is. But yeah, and I think about how important that was to book culture in general too. Everybody talks about
Absolutely.
book talk now. They talk about all the stuff that digital stuff, and maybe sometimes people like us lament that because so it's not quite the same as
Right.
reading a book like that. But I was just talking about this with another younger guest, even very young guest. She was 23, and she was
Right.
saying, writing her first novel. Go listen to that episode, listeners. And like
Mm.
it was just something about those books in particular. Like I was just thinking of the culture, like people waiting in line at midnight for the
Yeah.
release, people dressing up for the release. Like there was just this. Twilight had it a little bit too, but it just kind of it had that happen, and then now we just
Yeah.
don't do that anymore. There is no literary book that comes
Yeah.
out that creates a cult phenomenon, a cultural thing, and
Yeah.
maybe
And
it speaks to
I
books
like you,
being,
I'm
yeah,
so fascinated by like how that happens, how something just becomes so big. And yeah, it must have been at least twice as big as Twilight because Twilight was like very much for girls. I mean, I
hmm,
don't, that's what I remember about it.
it is, yeah.
It
We
was a
covered it on this
romance.
pod, yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah. Like more than anything, it's a romance. I actually just reread the Harry Potter books because I was thinking about this, and I probably haven't read them in full for maybe at least 10 years now.
Right.
So I read them all. And I know J.K. Rowling is controversial, but I don't think that anyone else could have done it. Maybe that's my controversial take, but I think she, like a lot of the authors that I admire, has such a distinct voice. And I think people discredit her a lot by saying that the books aren't actually very well written. But I think they're so funny.
And
She
they're
has such
actually
an inviting,
incredibly engaging. Like they're pretty
yeah.
like, when you talk about well written, people are
Hmm.
talking about they conflate different things, right? So well written in
Yes.
terms of being able to read through and like very pleasurable to read through, or
Yes.
well written in terms of this kind of flourishy, flowery, literary language,
Yeah, and
like
is
yeah,
Harry Potter high literature? No,
of
but
course, right.
is she a good writer? Yeah, I really, and I think people will say she's not a good, but for children's books especially, she can just hook you in, and that
Yeah.
is a mark of a good writer. Um, and she's very funny, and as you get older, you see more humor in the books. Like I was cracking up in a way that I don't often laugh at books. Um, so yeah, I mean, I often think that I think given if you gave anyone else this the formula, because it's a winning formula, the boarding school thing, the escapism, the chosen one who's also like oppressed by his family. It's a great formula, but I think that only she could have done it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when you look at the stuff that she's done that isn't Harry Potter, which obviously isn't as
Mm,
big as the Harry Potter stuff, right?
hmm.
She's hasn't really written children's shit since. I mean, she's written
No.
like there's like serious crime novels and like detective fiction. Like she likes that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
And she's pretty good at it, Like I mean,
yeah.
like she's
No,
pretty good at
exactly.
it. Yeah,
Her
like
voice
it's
comes through. She's just
yeah.
got it, and she has no formal training. She just got it. She's got a really idiosyncratic voice. Yeah.
Yeah, so just crazy how that's and it is such a and I have my first child here. She's only a year, but like my wife and I, we were introducing, we're very excited to introduce her to this part of our childhood, this
Mm,
millennial stuff.
yeah.
Like my wife and I actually reread the books over the pandemic, and we were
Mhm.
both like, yeah, we
Oh,
haven't
nice.
reread them in a while. We put them on audio. We were listening to it and kind of stuff, and I
Yeah.
was like, damn. And I always think of that scene in Azkaban, the Peter Pettigrew reveal in Azkaban is
Yeah.
the best part of the entire fucking series. It is
It's
so
so
done.
good.
Like that
It's so
Azkaban might be the
good.
best book. Like the way it all ties in, like from
Yeah.
this stuff, like it is just that reveal at the end is up there with the greats. It is
No,
such a great
the
reveal.
plotting is
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. I think that the fourth one is like a masterclass in a
Yes.
novel. I think it's just such a brilliantly structured novel. Like, oh, I was just, and you realize things that you don't even realize as a kid, the things that she's planting in there right from the beginning that turn out to be the reveal with, what's his name? The Mad Eye Moody impersonator.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just
Barty
she's
Crouch
just
Jr.
Barty Crouch Jr. Exactly. Yeah, that stuck my mind. She's just she's a really amazing plotter, and they're really amazing mystery books as well.
And the father-son dynamic, yeah, the
Hmm.
the
Yeah,
mother-child dynamic. There's just yeah,
yeah,
I mean, you know this is why I like having a PhD candidate on it, is that when it kind of the structures of story, the
Yes.
elements of story that are the universal thing, and
Hmm.
people conflate this. And this is on this podcast, I like to embrace all writing and all literature. So I like the
Yeah.
pop, I like the genre, I like
Yeah.
the young, I like the fantasy stuff. If it's good, obviously my metric is if
Hmm.
it's good or not. Yeah, not
Yeah.
like what genre it is, but if it's good.
Yeah.
I like Stephen King stuff and all that, but like
Me
there's
too.
a
I love Stephen
conflation.
King. Yeah.
It's that conflation that we already said, which is like they're confusing the kind of literary ambitions,
Hmm.
so like kind of internal, flowery language, all of that, with kind of the basic structures of story, which like,
Exactly.
okay, the best books have both usually, of course, but
Yes.
like
Yeah.
you can have a little bit of the other,
Hmm.
more or less of the others, and it works. You just have to have those story structural elements. I like
Completely.
crime TV, like I like,
Oh, me too. I
SVU
love
and
true
shit.
crime. Yeah.
There's something to the formula of like, a writer, think of a writer's room doing SVU or something. There's something to that
Hmm.
formula that just really works for me. I find comfort in it almost. Like this kind of like,
Yeah.
here's the brutal murder or whatever it is. And then you start piecing together the things. I think of the pulp greats. We talk about it all the
Yeah.
time on this podcast. I forget the guy's name. He had this formula where he just said, okay, step one, kill somebody in an unusual way. Okay. Step two,
Yeah.
pile trouble on the hero. They're just kind of this
Yeah.
thing, the act structure. And it's like that is a guaranteed hook, whether you're doing high literary, whether you're doing kind
Yeah.
of genre, pure pulp stuff. That is a hook in storytelling that just
Hmm.
is undersung in all these different ways here. I don't know. I'm not
Yeah.
talked about enough. Well, really, no books are talked about enough anymore, but
True.
literature and all that. But I didn't want to get bogged down in Harry Potter because I didn't even plan to ask you about it, but still,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
I brought
fun.
it up.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, it's fun. So I wanted to ask, what made you want to pursue a PhD in literature, And, what is your area of specialization that they force you
Yeah.
to
That they
focus
force
on?
you to choose very early on. I do 19th century poetry, so I look at a couple of different intersections. I look at poetry that can be looked at from a musical lens. So, with the music that was coming up at the time, which was like early ragtime, early blues, and the beginnings of jazz at the turn of the century. So, I look at
Right.
poetry that can be understood through that lens, and vice versa. And then I also look at poets that were doing this and that were transatlantic. So, I look at how that came from the States to the UK via poetry and music, and vice versa. So that's a lot of like Paul Laurence Dunbar. That's one of my central figures, and his work with Samuel Coleridge Taylor, who is a British composer that set his poems to music, and then that music came to the States. So that's sort of the crux of what I do.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't realize it was poetry focused.
Yeah.
What made you want to pursue that? What got you into being like, I like poetry enough to do this kind of, 5 year or, PhD track on it?
Yeah.
That's commitment. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I like there's this fairly recent idea, recent as in maybe 100 years old in literary study, um, about musical fiction, and I looked at jazz, Toni Morrison's jazz, for my master's dissertation, which I think is one of the greatest novels ever written, and looked at how you could read it as a song, and how it's structured in such a way that you can see all types of musical genres within it, depending on how you break it down.
Are
And I
you a
thought that
Gwendolyn
was
Brooks fan at all, or?
yes,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was gonna say. I
absolutely.
know that's not, 19th century so much, but
Yeah, but she's
jazz was
within very
the,
much within that, yeah,
yeah.
tradition. And I just really enjoyed that structural comparison between music and poetry, and also basically arguing that they're very much the same thing. Uh, so when you propose a PhD topic, you have to do something that's not been done before. That's the tough part.
At least you're
Like
supposed to
a lot of
try. Yeah.
people, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what you're meant to do. A lot of people have done Morrison. A lot has been said about Morrison,
Right.
and I couldn't say it better than it's already been said. So I looked at what I thought. So, and then the modernists, the jazz modernists, Langston
Right.
Hughes, Claude Mackay,
You said
they've
Ford
also
Maddox Ford was one of yours, right?
yeah, I love The
Yeah.
Good Soldier. So the African American novelists, uh, poets of the Harlem Renaissance have been done as well. That's
Right.
very well studied.
Yeah.
So I decided to look a little bit earlier, and see how that came about. and you also have people like Eliot, who's sometimes considered a jazz
Yeah.
poet. And I thought it had to have come from somewhere. So there were people before them that were doing it. I think we think of the modernists partially as being innovative because they were musical, Wolf as well. Um, but people like Paul Laurence Dunbar, basically, I'm trying to argue in my work, were doing it earlier, like at the end of the 19th century. And because they were going back and forth to London, um, they enabled that sort of musical modernism.
Yeah, you said once something during this that I just really want to latch on to for a minute is
Mm,
just that you said that about the big literary icons where there's somewhat everything has been said already. They've been studied to
mm,
death, when you especially when you get to like serious higher education with this like you
yeah,
are, your master's, PhD level, serious study of this type of stuff and it just there's so much. I have this theory, is why I'm bringing this up, is that so much of people blame the internet and technological advancements and, media being in front of your face and easily accessible to the decline of literature and literary studies, at least book sales and
mm,
people being interested in it, being like a kind of a cultural force, like Harry Potter was.
yeah, yeah,
Or even, you could think of literary novels that were just big hits, and everybody had
yeah.
read them and stuff. That just doesn't quite happen as much anymore.
Mm,
And I'm thinking, yeah, of course, there's probably something to do with the technology, of course. But I think it's more so that like almost everything has been said about these kind of, especially the great works throughout history. You go back and we've kind of reached a limit in terms of what we can say about it. So now you have people
yeah,
introducing new weird things and kind of, kind of the newer literary criticism stuff that started in the 80s. When you talk about the queer stuff and you talk about the
yes,
gender stuff,
yeah,
you talk that is an attempt to kind of wring the last drops of the, the rag
yeah,
of
yeah.
literary study
I
because we
agree.
just
Yeah.
I don't know. I just yeah, what do you think of that
Well,
theory
yeah,
and
I
yeah,
think, well, yeah, there now it's very vogue to do from a feminist perspective, and
right.
then there's also now there's eco-criticism, which is from
Right.
an
Yes.
environmentalist
Yes.
perspective.
All
Like
political.
you,
I like to point out all political things
yeah, all very
pretending to be
political.
literary. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the sort of ism thing,
Yes.
environmentalism,
Yeah.
feminism. That's being communism. I guess people have been doing communism
Yeah.
literary
Some
theory
some are.
forever.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
the
but
Marxist theory or the class theory has become this
yeah, yeah, like Terry
kind of
Eagleton, I guess,
yeah,
was doing that ages ago.
yeah.
But um,
I know it's a lot. I was
why was I
throwing a lot
talking about
at you. I
this?
know.
Yeah,
I
I was
know.
just
I was
trying,
throwing a
just
lot
lot.
at you. Yeah.
But I think it's just a lot of it. I will say, doing a PhD, a lot of it's saying the same thing.
Right.
Like,
That's what you notice when you start doing serious. You go through the
yeah, and
JSTOR pages and it's like,
yeah,
these are all the same
it's
article. Yeah.
right, and it's just it's important to apply these things from a gendered
Right.
lens and so on. But every once in a while, you'll find yourself reading like Macbeth from an eco-critical perspective, and I'm just like, how did I even like get here? You know, like
Yeah.
sometimes it's just Macbeth in a lot of ways. You
Yeah.
know,
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar as it goes, right?
yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just curious about that because I think there is, it's something I do care about. I'm not in academia
Mm,
anymore, but like I was for many years and I taught college and stuff like that. And it was just,
yeah.
there is a less importance, and I think it's because, I would call a lot of that kind of, it's nonsense. It's not really
Mm,
serious engagement with it. It's kind of putting something else on top of it and like forcing
yeah.
the framework, and that can be fun. That can be, we can explore different things like
Yeah.
that. That was the big pull of it when it first came out was everybody's, oh, this new way to view
Yeah.
literature and kind of do maybe even kind of, masturbatory academic stuff, right? Where you're just
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of, exploring kind of mental masturbation, as they call it. The joke in grad
Yeah.
school was always, yeah, what is this?
Yeah.
And sometimes there's some of that, but then sometimes it's brilliant. And I don't know. We're in a weird place culturally with this great art form. And I just am curious about, yeah, your thoughts on that kind of stuff. But
I
yeah,
think a
okay.
lot of it has become, well,
No,
I
please,
guess we could
please,
talk about this forever,
please.
but
Yeah.
a lot of it's just become people reading stuff that's been rewritten a million
Mm-hmm.
times
Mm-hmm.
and reciting it again. And for a lot of people, it's actually novel because I don't know that
Right.
people are actually thinking about this sort of thing as much. So sometimes if you're like looking up fantasy literature phenomenon, what is the reason fantasy, what's the psychological, theoretical reason why a fantasy is so attractive to so many people, you'll just get the same thing over and over instead of
Right.
looking at structure. and or form or voice or
Right.
even word choice. Like you could
Yeah.
break these down to the building blocks of it, which is actually literary
Right.
theory, which I find interesting.
Yeah, it's more fun
Uh,
usually. Yeah.
yeah,
Especially as a
because otherwise it's
craft.
just like idea. It's just,
Right.
this is how I feel, which is great, but I don't need to read it all the time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. I think of that. It's interesting when you get really into somebody too. Like I'm really a big fan of Edith Wharton.
Oh
I
yeah,
think she's one of the greatest American
yeah.
novelists. Yeah, and just when you trace that back, I can remember reading those novels, and my big kind of thing that everybody laughs me out of the room for is that I don't think she's a satirist at all. Like I don't think that. Then if you trace that back,
Yeah.
there was scholarship in the 60s that started, and when it's mostly this kind of Marxist class analysis
Mm,
thing where they start to pretend that this woman who is so fucking wealthy that she never had to work a day in her life had some kind of class solidarity with the lower classes because she was like, winking at you. And I was just like, that's a stretch. When I don't get
no,
that. The
yeah.
closest I could get to that is Custom of the Country. I think that's a humor, like kind of
Okay,
comedy
yeah.
book. But House of Mirth,
Oh
Age of
yeah.
Innocence,
Oh, it's
even
yeah.
her less known stuff, Summer, The Children, these are not
Mm,
satirical works. Like, I don't see a piece of satire in them. And for me to say that, like,
yeah.
again, I've been laughed out of rooms because of this, where I'm just like, it's just been accepted since kind of the 60s with a few kind of influential,
Yeah.
literary scholarship pieces. And we just kind of blindly accept it now. So I always think like the more interesting way to go now with like everything's been said is start to find different angles. And I guess that's the goal of some of these newer theories, with kind of the yeah, feminist or queer, like we already said, these kind of
Hmm.
or class analysis or something. And those can be interesting. They can serve a point, but I don't know. I feel like now, since so much has been said, maybe we should start going back and start looking for like how accurate were we in some of these
Yeah.
exploratory theories? How accurate were some of these? Were they just, intellectual exercises, or were they
Yeah.
serious engagement with, the legacy of this and its influence around, the literary world and why we canonize it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just my kind of, shaking my
Well,
fist.
no, I would agree, and I think as well, there's authors that still haven't had much said about them, like
Yeah.
this collaboration between this poet and this musician that I am focusing on has, like, it's in Dunbar's biography, but the is other than that, it's not really an element of literary history as we know
Yeah.
it. So it's also, we don't have to repeat the same thing, like we can let Edith Wharton sit,
Right. Yeah.
there's other, there's a lot of, there's been very little done on like Mary Shelley's other novels, for example, but so much has been said about Frankenstein. That's just one that
Right.
I've been thinking about recently. But yeah, there's other works and other
I'm
people too.
I'm not even really familiar with Mary Shelley's other stuff. Like that's
Yeah.
like yeah, like they don't even mention it most of the time.
Oh
Like
yeah.
even
Well,
if
no,
you
and they
go
don't.
through like
Yeah.
yeah, that's one thing about this podcast is a constant theme on the show where
Yeah.
here we're like somebody like I'll get an email from a listener or something. They'll be like, "Have you ever read this?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? No, I haven't. I did it with a friend that we did George Oppin's kind of collected poems,
Okay.
and it was one of those things where Oppin's such a huge figure and he inspired so many of especially kind of the postmodernist writers,
Mm,
Louise Glick and stuff like that. And it was just I was never assigned an Oppin thing. Studying
yeah.
poetry seriously at a high level in grad school and all that, like never assigned this in a survey course, never it was just completely
Right.
forgotten. And he's this huge part of that point in history. But you just and I get it, you have to do in a survey course, you gotta cut some things out. You can't get everything in a survey
Right.
course. I get it. But like there is like, okay, once you get to the graduate level and you've selected to do a specific thing like 20th century
Yeah.
poetry or whatever, you
Yeah.
would think that it
Absolutely.
would come up and it just doesn't.
Mm,
And I get it's easy to blame, colleges or administrations or something. It's
yeah.
easy to do that, but I think it's more of just like we're almost focusing on the wrong things where we're
Mm,
we're so focused on this other stuff over here. And this is why I always try to separate the political from the literary, where like
yeah.
where I feel like we're so preoccupied with the political because partly because we've run out of things to say on the literary side of
Yeah.
stuff, and that offers a whole new window, whole new,
Yeah.
basket of things you can pull from that like we're missing the bigger point of it. Like the reason that we've set up, the most prestigious colleges in the world have entire departments dedicated to this. Like it's just like,
Right.
there's a reason for that, and it isn't just the political, parallels you can draw from this. Like that's
Yeah.
so far down the list of things that you should be worrying about. Or, I mean, there's a place for that, and obviously,
Yeah.
people do it, but yeah, I just feel like
Yeah.
it's so everywhere right now to the point where I'm just
I
kind of,
agree. I really
yeah.
do. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about dark academia. Dark
Yes.
academia. One, I wanted to ask, what is dark academia, and why do you call your novel a dark academia novel?
Okay. Dark academia is a function largely of like book talk and
Yeah,
bookstagram. And so I did not, okay, to be candid,
this is for
dark
the
academia
boomers
is,
listening. Yeah, that
yeah,
don't
it's a
understand what that
marketing
means.
tool, very
Yeah,
much. It's a marketing tool, like a lot of, like romantasy,
right.
right? Romantasy has, like, Lord of the Rings has romance, right? But it was just a classic work of, you know, fantasy. Romantasy is just a trend that is used to label things in a certain way so that people very quickly can see what sort of book it is, and it's largely based on, I think, vibes and aesthetics, whatever that means
Very
nowadays.
internet means
um
internet. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, like aesthetics I think now just means like color schemes and things. I don't even know,
yeah,
it's just gotten
yeah.
crazy. um so dark academia is sort of evokes this idea of dark Gothic Ivy League or Oxford Cambridge campus with spires and hallowed halls and esoteric professors and like Latin and Greek and strange but very brilliant students. But it's also evolved now to be sort of dark academia fantasy. So then
Hmm.
you have like witches, so you have the cults and culty witches and wizards and magic systems in these dark academia settings too. Uh, my book is a campus novel, really, which is different, but dark academia, you could say that it's dark academia. It's set at an elite university and it looks at students at that university. But I think if you got it because you want a dark academia read and you've been reading Book Talk's dark academia, I don't think it would make, I don't think that you would think that it's within that genre necessarily.
Yeah, like everything else. The reason I asked to for the explainer is for people that I know have no idea what we're talking about that are listening. I like to think I have a wide range of listeners here that
Yeah.
they tell me between ages 25 and like 55 usually. So there's
Okay.
some people I think that do not understand what that means, and they also don't understand what an internet trend actually entails, which is a lot of nothing usually. It's just a lot of kind of like
Yeah.
you said, vibes, kind of. I would see these things with dark academia. I didn't quite know what they were talking about. Seemed like it was just like leather chairs and like dark stained wood and things
And
like
like
paneling on the
skulls like
yeah.
on desks.
Yes.
That's what it is. And
Yeah.
smoke, like cigars, professors smoking
Incense.
cigars.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just weird velvet fabrics,
Yeah.
and yeah, it just kind of it's an aesthetic, and so much of what happens now, I feel like, especially trends, and this goes for all art listeners, but we're focused on books for this podcast, but it's just like the trends that happen online now are so empty because they are just
Yeah.
this kind of vibes and, like you said, aesthetics, but aesthetic to the point of just like color patterns and things, like not even like the
Yeah.
deeper aesthetic that draws you in or something.
Right.
These kind of superficial things that everybody kind of gravitates to for a little bit, and then the trend goes away, and it just kind of, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So you were saying that it was mostly kind of a marketing thing, that you were like, I'm going to get on the book talk circuit by
Well,
calling it academia,
well,
or
it fits, right?
right,
It has the tropes. It has
right,
the elite campus and it's the sorority, it's about sorority girls, so it's got the cultish thing. But when I wrote about 7 or 8 years ago, and dark academia was not, I had never heard of this phrase before. Um, and so I didn't, maybe I would have done more like
right.
ravens delivering mail or something. I don't know. But um, so if it fits, it fits. And if it makes people kind of sort of understand what might be going on, then it works. There's also the weird, have you heard of the weird girl literature?
No, but I imagine I
Mm.
kind of know what that is.
Yeah, well, it is. it is what it says it is. That's the other big thing. It's weird girl literature. So I'm saying that my book is weird girl literature. Um, and then I think people will read it and they're like, oh, those girls are really weird. It's like,
Right.
well, yeah, I thought that that was what it was. Um, but it's a particular kind of quirkiness, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, so these are like sub genres that are
Yeah.
just very reductive and in a lot of ways useless unless you're basically going for authors that write these things in order to for their houses that then market them as such for a very
Right.
specific readership.
But I mean, it's a good point you make because I think that there is a difference now in terms of the marketing of books is much different than it was 5 years
Yeah,
ago, 10 years ago. Like this is just, it's not even the same animal anymore. And
no,
it is kind of embracing these kind of hashtags. It's embracing the trend
yes,
of the day. It's kind of how can we tailor this? If you're hearing this, it's because you are listening to the free public feed of Heavy Board. To get complete, uncensored, uninterrupted, full access to this podcast, become a subscriber at patreon.com/heavyboard. That's right, Heavy Board is made possible by subscribers like you. For less than 1 cup of coffee per month, you will receive private access to uncensored, full-length episodes, Jerk Shop, heavy bonus content, subscribers only AMA episodes, bonus extended interviews, and more. Come join the conversation today at patreon.com/heavyboard. Marketing scheme to, the trend that's pushing online right now. Um, and I understand why, publishers especially want to do that because I mean they need to push the books, but it's just interesting how that all plays out. The kind of
yeah,
intersection of the internet and art and literature and where it's all headed. And it does feel a little empty. I think everybody kind of feels that it's like not quite real, or maybe that's the fact that it's all on a screen. Maybe it's the fact that you said it's basically, like
yeah,
these vibes where people try to like oh, I like that. What was that? Oh, it's dark academia. Oh, okay. Like it just, that's how it
yeah,
happens. I need nothing more serious or sinister than that. It's just kind of a passing along the information,
yeah.
absorbing it.
It's just empty sort of phrases because the words even dark academia are just so meaningless together. Like,
They want to imagine themselves as like Aleister Crowley or something.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Um, there's just so I'm on TikTok. I have a TikTok. I have like 30,000 followers on TikTok where I talk about books. But I try to avoid those sorts of phrases unless I'm sort of critiquing them and then they come for me.
how is that in terms of like using TikTok as an author now? Because this is the one that everybody, we have authors on all the time, and a lot of them struggle with this side of it. They struggle with the social media posting. They struggle with the, everybody doesn't want to get yelled at, of course, but then there's
Yeah.
also just like, the attention economy is social media. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
like you have to make people pay attention to you, the kind of look at me thing, because there's thousands of things that they could just scroll past. So of
hmm
course that makes sense. I don't know. I just navigating that. Have you found? You said you've kind of found a niche, doing almost like explainer videos
Yeah,
on
I do a
TikTok.
lot of like literature, sort of what is Gothic literature?
Right.
Here's the subgenres of Gothic literature from the perspective of someone who studies literature. So I do things like that, where I do reading lists for a Shakespeare module, for example.
Right.
But it's funny that, yeah, it's funny that you mentioned people getting mad at you because those are my best videos. Like those
Right.
get the absolute most, which is so toxic. I believe it's called rage bait, but it's so toxic because the things that people hate, they comment on, and then it picks up and picks up and picks up, and that's how your account grows. Which is like all you have to do is mention that you like Harry Potter nowadays, and it's just a pile on on there, you know?
And it's interesting that it's a pylon because it's a pylon of people desperate for the authority. Like it's this kind of
Yeah.
like they're desperate to uh have it, like saying that you don't like Harry Potter in most people's heads gives them this like authority over literature, or this authority
Yeah.
over what real, quote unquote, real literature is, right? Like this kind of,
Mm.
and that's a dynamic that has always been
Hmm.
there in terms of, peers or whatever in academia, but like it's just so expanded now with everybody having social media that like, people that have no idea what they're talking about will say that kind of stuff and you're just like, okay, like
Yeah.
it's always
And
interesting
and
like
then
no please.
people will like debate them
Yeah, yeah,
in your
exactly.
comments, and then it's just other people going at each other and you're not even in the comments. Um, it's just a crazy world on TikTok and social media. But it's so necessary and it's a shame. But that's one of the things that they say you have to get on social media to try to sell your book.
Yeah, nobody wants it. Nobody wants to do it, but for some reason,
No,
it's the only option.
yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about humor. Why is humor important in fiction writing and then in your fiction writing too?
Yeah, I mean, I love funny writers. In fact, I probably like for my literary fiction, probably solely gravitate towards authors that use comedy, because I think some of the smartest authors can pull off comedy the best. It's very hard to write humor. Um, some of the darkest books are also very funny, like Vonnegut deals with incredibly dark themes, but has humor alongside it, which is also very difficult. And I think it's a very human reaction to treat dark material, which a lot of literary fiction has, with humor. And I think it can just be a really interesting dynamic on the page, to make someone experience something very dark in a story and then laugh at it. And it can also be a tonic, and a form of, I don't know, joy amongst a lot of the bleakness that literature
Yeah.
tends to carry. So I love reading it. So I've tried to write it as well.
Yeah, I even think of things like Dickens and stuff. Like when you read
Yeah.
Dickens' work, like the humor pretty much holds up. This like we're talking 100
Yeah.
years later,
Oh
it
no,
holds up.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not all of it, but most of them are pretty good. I'm even thinking of, the screenwriter Billy Wilder, like the kind of his famous quote that one of his many famous quotes was he would say, yeah, make them cry, make them thrilled, make them feel suspense. He's like, but for God's
Mm.
sakes, make them laugh, like, and
Yeah.
it was just kind of this thing where like a good story has those emotional registers going up and
Hmm.
down all the time, little jokes creeping in, etc. Even the most high literary stuff has to have a
Yeah.
little bit of this humor. And like I like how you said it is kind of just another element of humanity where it's like this is makes it more real, it makes it more human, it makes it more universal, it makes it more interesting, more fun, even because
Hmm.
you're getting little jokes after something that like horrific happened or
Hmm.
I don't know. It maybe even as technique wise, right? Like the humor helps to soften the blow for like a horrific thing that happens to a character or something for a reader. There's craft styles
Hmm.
to it. Yeah, it just so I'm always curious, and I know that's a huge question. We have a lot of big questions.
Yeah.
Again, we don't
Yeah.
need definitive answers. It's just yeah, Heather's thoughts on this, how what you're thinking, seeing, reading. So yeah, I was just curious. And then when you use it in your own fiction, you just said it was because you felt it's necessary, right? Like it's just this is what your idols did, and this is how great stories have these elements of jokes. Even like we mentioned Shakespeare, the jokes, the sexual
Yeah.
innuendos, like the things that are
Yeah.
everywhere in Shakespeare, like because give them something. Like if people are coming to see your
Yeah.
play, they want to read your book, give
Absolutely.
them something
Yeah.
naughty, give them something funny, give them something taboo, like,
Hmm.
forbidden, like this is what it's for.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, just very interesting. I wanted to ask you about academic. This is another theme on the podcast, the
Yeah.
types of writing. So academic writing versus fiction writing, do you approach fiction writing differently from your academic writing? And what would you say are the differences between the two forms, if any? How do you approach those?
Yeah. Um, to me, totally different worlds, totally
Right.
different parts of my brain, honestly. For me, academic, especially for a PhD, which the whole project is to, um, like make a dent in the existing literature. Um, you're constantly deferring to other people in a
Right.
PhD. Anything that I write is predicated usually on something that someone has said, which I have cited, unless I'm going crazy and making my own argument. But it's all rooted in something else. Normally, that's explicitly said that you are. So to me, it's like it's not creative, really. You
Right.
can get creative, with the way that you structure things, and when you do start bringing your own arguments, you can have a little bit of creativity there. But in my mind, it's much more scientific, logical. It has to follow a very specific structure, and it has to have an argument. So it has to have some sort of logic. Fiction is totally, totally different from that. I never start at the beginning of my stories. I very rarely plot anything, which is you can't do that with a PhD or with academic writing. It's incredibly structured.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. Yeah, I mean, this terms of I think of it, I mean, academia is such a stark difference. The academic writing
Mm,
is stark, even when you compare it to other nonfiction writing like
yeah.
journalism or essays or anything like that. The personal essay, which is everywhere now, the only
Yes.
thing really that's published
Mm,
anywhere now. Even journalism is like personal essays now. It
yeah.
just, and in social media, you see that. I'm fascinated. I mean, I know you're into this too, but kind of the language creep. So you'll read an article in the New York Times or something, the most prestigious publication
Yeah.
in the world, and there's all this internet language. What the New
Yeah.
Yorker or was it the Harper's just did something on Gooning, right? Like this thing that
Oh
was
God.
everywhere. That
Yeah.
essay, did you see this essay? And I was
I
just thinking to
didn't, but I'm
myself,
kind of
like,
glad I didn't. Yeah.
and again, for people that don't know, the older listeners out there, gooning is it refers to masturbating in like excess, essentially, online. It's an online
Oh my
slang term,
God.
and this term is now published in some of the most prestigious publications in the world, and it's almost like presented to you as like an interesting think piece or something. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
this is the, you don't even realize how much this is creeping into the kind of
Mm,
institutional, gate kept kind of
yeah.
PhDs, the prestige of these things. Like, I don't know if somebody made this point where you said, just look at the arts and leisure section, in the Sunday Times from 2014. Just go look at it
Yeah.
from like 10 years ago. It is a completely different world now. Like the stuff that's being
Right.
written about, there's no poetry being written about, or if there is, it's Instagram, TikTok tier garbage,
Oh my God.
and it's
Yeah.
pretending that that's the same thing as Yates or something. And like, it's like, okay. Um, and the same thing with this Gooning shit, which again, I don't believe that that's even like a big enough thing. Like, I'm
I've
sure there are
never
people
I've
that
never
are,
heard that in that context ever. And I'm
I'm
pretty like online.
I'm sure there are people that have crippling addictions to like pornography or something. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's some. I can't imagine that it's more than a very
It
small,
just
a small chunk of
no.
people. Yeah. Most people are normal about this kind
Yeah,
of stuff. Most people
I'm
are normal,
honestly I'm
but
shocked at that. I've never even heard
this is
that.
just the beginning, Heather.
Yeah.
From what I've seen the last 10 years, it's going to keep going down
Yeah.
that
Oh God.
social
Yeah.
media slope. So
Mm,
you'll see more and more kind of, online,
I'm
internet,
sure.
social media slang creeping into the most prestigious publications in the world, creeping into
Yeah.
academic work, all of that. But yeah, it's just always interesting how those different things play out. And now you see this kind of creep in everything. I see it in literature, I see it in
Hmm.
journalism, I see it in essay writing. There's this tendency to speak like you're posting online. It's like
Yeah.
a cadence, it's an attitude even.
Yeah.
It's an aesthetic, let's go there, right? That is kind of like online commentary aesthetic that is
Yeah.
kind of everywhere. And it's a little different on TikTok, it's a little different on Instagram, it's a little different on
Hmm.
Twitter. There's different kind of niche audiences and ways of speaking on all these different platforms, which I know older people listening don't quite understand that, but that's how it's played out so far and will probably continue. Everybody has their favorite. I'm addicted to Twitter and things like
Hmm.
that. And that was kind of the big thing maybe 5, 10 years ago,
Yeah.
right? Not so much anymore. It's kind of shrinking user base. And then they
Hmm.
say TikTok, but it's a slightly different thing, right? Because it's a video format versus a text
Yeah.
format. The snarkiness, internet snark I see in movie
Hmm.
reviews when I read them all the time, even from, again, the most prestigious publications in the world. Richard Brody, go read his New Yorker movie reviews from
Hmm.
2014. It is night and day compared to what he's
Right.
writing now. It is completely internet, just poisoned with internet
Wow.
slop, political stuff, like it just completely poisoned. And this guy used to be great. He's sitting in the chair that Pauline Kael used to occupy,
Yeah.
and it's just destroying that legacy, in my opinion. Now, but
Yeah.
I don't want to get too bogged down on that. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I have a soft spot for Riz though. Have you heard that one?
what is
So Riz is when Riz is a shortened form of charisma. That's
right?
why I like
Okay,
it. I
yeah,
actually think that's clever. I like
heard the
that.
term. Yeah,
And I think phonically, Riz actually sounds like what it means. So I do think that some of it's okay. I like that one
Yeah.
because it's rooted in the word itself. But yeah, the TikTok cadence is just crazy.
Well, I'm fascinated by that too, in terms
Yeah.
of yeah, how it changes how you speak and all of that. Like it really is, this is how language always developed, of course.
Mm,
You'd have slang terms develop and they'd slowly propagate, et cetera, all over the place.
mm,
But with social media, that's sped up now. So a slang term that would take 5 to 10 years to propagate throughout all of America, well, now that has international um,
yeah.
reach the day it's invented. So literally within 24 hours,
Yeah.
48 hours, a new slang term will exist and it will be in the pages of the New York Times. It will be like these things will be. It just kind of happens so much faster. And of course, some of
Yeah.
them stick around, some of them don't. We've already moved on from some of them. But like you said, ones like Riz, I mean, No Cap, like I feel like No Cap's
Oh
already kind of
gosh.
that's
Yeah.
moving on. Like we're moving on
Yeah.
from that type of terms of slang. Um, Bet, I mean, like,
That was around for ages. Is
see,
that dead now?
I'd never heard it until I got to grad school and had some like
Really?
22-year-olds around me that were like saying it. And I'm like, well, so that means like, right? Okay. Like,
Yeah.
yes. And they're like, oh, bet. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what
Yeah.
does that?
Agreement. Affirmative.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, okay. Uh, it's stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah. Going off of that with the youth culture here, drugs,
Yeah.
partying, the college experience, if you will, right?
Yeah.
That sort of setting, I feel like it's always rich for a novel. The campus life, I mentioned in the intro, it's a long tradition in literature of the campus novel. Why did you choose the college campus as a setting for this one? What inspired that, particularly kind of the raw look at it,
Yeah.
maybe just the real look at it. It doesn't have to be like super raw, just the kind of the drugs, the partying, the
Yeah.
recklessness, carelessness, casual
I
cruelty.
yeah, I guess there's two things. I love environments that are really claustrophobic, for fiction, because I just think it's the perfect way to make people act strangely, to make people act in their worst interest amongst one another. Um, so when I went to Michigan. So when I got there, the sorority house was just the most amazing place in my mind for fiction. I just thought you could do anything with it, and the fraternity house too. Any enclosed environment that is elite and exclusive just harbors fascination.
Yeah.
Um, and I I've always loved writers who experiment when their characters are experimenting. So someone like Martin Amis, his characters are always on drugs, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. That's like the most brilliant work because they mirror the experiences mentally that their characters are having. So I like, or even in Hemingway, like he's so succinct, and then his character gets drunk and everything changes in the way that he's actually writing his paragraph form. And I find that really interesting. So for me, it's like the formal innovation that can come when characters are outside of themselves, when they're under the influence, and so on. And then that was just kind of the perfect avenue for that.
Yeah, and I think that's a particular, like you said, going to a big sports school like
Mm,
Michigan. And again, it's not just sports listeners. I know Michigan. Again, I love Frank O'Hara. He's an alumni from there, etc.
yeah,
But like this kind of like, it's more than that. But it's really, the big schools,
yeah,
Ohio
yeah,
State, Michigan, the rivalry, etc., etc. uh, there is a different thing than if you just go to your normal kind of state school and join a sorority. It's completely not completely different, but
yeah.
it's a lot of differences in terms of how tight knit it is, how competitive it is, because there's
Mhm.
more than one sorority at these. There's usually like
Yes,
a
yeah,
couple dozen or so that are
yeah, yeah.
competing and doing the color rushes and all of that. And like mixers, all that, the parties, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. So I mean, it is a different thing. And I know everybody's like,
Mm,
"Oh, I went to this college, and the football games were fun," but like you can just see it if you like college football or something, which I do, and I watch regularly. I'm going to watch some today later tonight with my
mm,
daughter. But it's just like this is like when the whole school storms the field after they
yeah,
win. Like the entire school just hammered drunk, right? All these 20-year-olds, right,
yes,
going to storm the
yeah.
thing. That is a lot of fun. Obviously, it's cool, but it's such a camaraderie thing with
Mhm.
strangers, even people you've never
Yeah.
met before. You're all intoxicated and feeling the same way, and then you're all happy because your team won, and you storm this thing, and you storm that field, and you don't even really do anything. It's not like they
Yeah.
break stuff or something. Sometimes that
Oh
happens, but
yeah.
not always. Usually it's just a bunch of drunk college kids like partying and having fun, and then they go to the after party. But I don't know, that is
Yeah.
a different thing. And I like how you said exclusive, tight knit. Every time you go up in a tier here, if you're a part of it, that's part of why we want to be in exclusive things.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
exclusivity means prestige. Exclusivity
Mhm.
means desire. Like that makes it more desirable. Like, this is, high-end fashion brands kind of have like a
Yeah. Yeah.
false scarcity in their products because it makes you want them more because not everybody gets to have it, right? Not everybody gets to
Mhm.
join that specific sorority.
Yeah.
And then that can create even fictional stuff, scenarios, tension
Mhm.
scenarios, screwing over scenarios, these kind of character interactions. Like it just, it's so rich, and there's a reason that has been a historical tradition in literature because it does open you up to this. You can go any direction with that too. You see the horror
Exactly.
stuff that people have written about, so, sorority row, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
Like it can work in that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting how that happens. And I like that idea of settings, because as a writer, that's a big choice, right? And I think you sometimes even have the setting before you have anything else, right? You're like, I
Yeah.
know I want to set
Mm.
this in a sorority type setting at a big,
Mm.
D1 college sports school where there's a lot of students, a lot of
Yeah.
different departments, a lot of tech, and you could go you so you could focus on the robotics department, or you could focus on the
Yeah.
sorority over here, or this
Yeah.
sorority, or rival sororities, or the football. All of that could happen just so great. So I love seeing how writers come to that. And sometimes it's just a whim, right? Was it just like a whim, or it was just like you were living it at the time? And you're like, this could be very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm from New York, and there's no Michigan, University of Michigan on the East Coast. You don't have that. And I'm not from like a lot of people in Michigan come from Michigan families and they grow up going to Michigan games, and it's a whole culture. I No one from my high school had ever gone to Michigan. I don't even think I'd ever been in Michigan before I went, now that I
I've
think of
never
it.
been, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, why would you? Very much
Because
like,
even if you're driving through the US to get to
yeah,
Michigan, you have to just go up a little bit. It's
right.
kind of out
Yeah.
of your way. So I've driven through other parts like Ohio and stuff. I'm from Maryland,
Yeah,
so it's not like it was
exactly.
too far, but yeah.
And it all looks the same anyway. Like you're in Ohio, you're in Pennsylvania, you're in Michigan.
Yeah.
Um, so I got there, and it was completely abstract before I got there, and it is really unbelievable when you get there, not having experienced it before. The spirit, the school spirit, the
Right.
tailgating, the games. Um, it's like nothing you know really. And so yeah, I got there and I just found it really, really fascinating, and a bit strange, but also really fun.
Right.
Uh, and yeah, I was in it and I just started writing, and it's developed a lot over the years since I left college. And I added a lot of hyperbole. Like there's so much, it's supposed to be sort of grotesque.
Yeah.
Like I don't know that any of this stuff is happening, but it's supposed to be an exaggeration about
But it
what could
could.
happen.
Yeah, it could
Yes,
happen. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, are you were you inspired by any of the kind of, I think of, the young writers that got their start writing.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Bret Easton Ellis, Less Than Zero. I'm thinking
Mm,
S.E. Hinton, The
yeah.
Outsider. I'm thinking of the people that were writing even as teenagers, early 20s,
Yeah.
and specifically about youth culture. What are the kids doing these days? What are
Yeah.
they doing these days? And of course, it's exaggerated. Were they having gang
Yeah.
rapes, at house
Yeah,
parties
exactly.
during that?
Yeah.
Probably not. Maybe it happened once or twice. I don't know. Probably.
Mm,
It's a possibility. It could happen.
exactly. Yeah.
But, having that in the end of Less Than Zero or something is very
Yeah.
graphic, horrific kind of thing. And
Hmm.
then, like, I don't know. I mean, that's part of it too, right? The taboo, the
Yeah.
the the forbidden. I mean, that is a good story. We want to hear about dark magic. We want to hear about
Yeah.
these kind of curses and, yeah. So I don't know, just interesting how that plays out and how the setting lends it to. So if you want to set it in like a fucking tundra where there's nothing around, well, then now you're limited to certain
Right.
aspects. You set it in a college campus, you have almost too many even. You have to kind of pick where you want to
Yeah.
go with it. Yeah.
Right.
Professor relationships. Oh, we don't have
Hmm.
to go that far, or we could.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Harry Potter style. Yeah, the kind of
Right.
boarding
Yeah,
school.
there's a million things you could do with the campus. I think there's a reason why so many authors are obsessed with it. There's any
Not just because
number of
they,
things.
not just because they make their living on them usually, but yeah,
Right, yeah.
yeah. There's always those. We didn't even talk about
Yeah.
Martin Amis, and I'm not a huge Martin Amis guy, but I'm a
Really?
big Christopher Hitchens guy,
Okay.
and they were good friends, and they were constantly talking and writing about each other and stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
always kind of. It's just one of those things where I just never found, like a little like rabbit hole to
Yeah.
go down with Amos. So like, there's so much, but it's on my list, of
Yeah.
course. I'd love to cover some of it for this podcast.
Mm.
But yeah, that's just also, is that what made you want to, he's British, right? Is that what made you want to go to
He
the
is
UK
British.
for,
He's actually British, but he loved New York. He loved America.
yeah, the Brits always
He
do.
loved
They love
yeah.
America.
Yeah, because he thought the Brits don't have the idea of the literary celebrity in the same way that
Yeah.
the Americans do.
He's
So
right
he felt
about
like
that. Yeah.
so he felt like he could go to America and be the star that he was meant to be.
That's what Hitchens
Um,
said too.
oh
And then
really?
of course that's what his brother accuses him of all the time too.
Oh,
Peter
okay.
Hitchens.
And Kingsley Amis accused his son of that as well. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
You're just saying like he
I
knew that to be a celebrity writer, you have to come to the United States, essentially. Like you
I
can't be
think
like hanging
so.
out in
Yeah.
Oxford and still you could
Right.
maybe, Solomon Rushdie or something. You could, but even so, you gotta come to
Yeah.
the United States. Okay. You gotta
Yeah.
come to the US where we make and break big celebrity careers,
Right. Well,
essentially.
the Brits, they don't worship in the same way.
Right.
They, everyone's
Interesting.
level in a lot of ways. There's a certain solidarity that they admire here, I think. So they don't worship the celebrity in the same
That's
way.
interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard that because I mean, obviously I have friends and stuff that come and guests on this podcast that live over there
Mm,
and stuff. It's just interesting seeing the American abroad kind of
yeah.
perspective on it. Yeah, the difference in culture. Because you've been over there for a while now. You said you got your master's there and now you're finishing your
I
PhD. So
did.
it was
Yeah.
almost a decade of you being
Um,
in
six or
the
seven
UK.
years now. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Do you think
Yeah.
you'll ever come back to the United States or?
Well, maybe if there's a chance to become a literary celebrity,
Yeah,
but
yeah, or a 10-year offer or something. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I might. I'm not sure. My fiance is Welsh, so he's
Oh,
very
okay. So
fascinated
right.
by the States. I think it's because he's from a small Welsh village, and whenever he visits me, he goes to Manhattan. So I'm like, of course you're fascinated by
Hmm.
it.
Oh yeah,
So
they
we'll
love
see.
it. They love it. They
Yeah,
just can't get enough of our scraps. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So that's interesting too. So yeah, so then if you have a relationship that might tie you there, that's interesting. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You never know how that plays out.
No,
But okay, so the study of literature. Since I have a current PhD student at one of the most prestigious colleges in the world, I'm talking to right now, I wanted to ask you about kind of literary study. And we kind of talked about this already, but I wanted to ask, is the study of literature missing something? Are they focusing on something that's distracting and not, I don't know. I mean, how your thoughts on it? Again, we don't need to answer this for the world. Just your experience, what you're feeling in that. Um, is it becoming more ignorable because we're not doing anything interesting, like we kind of said earlier? We're repeating things that have already been said 100 years ago. I don't know. I mean, what are you feeling? What are you seeing? What are they telling you about your job prospects post
yeah,
graduation? Like what are you seeing in the kind of study of literature? And this maybe you're not seeing anything, maybe nothing, everything's fine. I'm just curious. I want to
yeah,
collect firsthand accounts of
yeah,
how academic study is going in this field that I love and care about, like so
yeah,
much. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's so much going on. I think places like Oxbridge are still very, very traditional and are still managing to avoid the politicization of
Hmm.
literature, like the isms, really. And they're still doing a lot of structure, a lot of form, a lot of theory. Um, and those are the people I think that are often very much admired in the Oxbridge faculties. They're truly doing literary analysis
Right.
rather than taking scenes and putting them into a kind of ideology, which is
Right.
also what some academics do, and that's also like there's a place for it as well.
Right.
But Oxford is still quite traditional. Um, it's also English literature is still very much respected somewhere like Oxbridge, whereas all I hear about in the States is the defunding of literature and probably even more so other humanities
Oh, yes.
areas. But in somewhere like Oxford, I think literature is quite prestigious still because it's got like a several hundred-year-old history
Right.
that it's got that advantage over American
And that
universities.
beautiful old library and yeah.
Yes, yeah. So like when you had Shakespeare perform like in your city, maybe
Hmm.
you feel a certain fidelity to keep up that tradition. So it seems, I mean, the market is bleak. That's all you hear in
Right.
humanities. I'm just
And it
choosing to ignore
is.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just choosing to ignore that till I finish my dissertation, see what
Yeah.
happens. I'm hearing a lot that rhetoric is the way to go, but
Yeah, even that's drying up a little bit. But yeah,
really,
for when because that's the same that when I graduated in 2019 with my
okay,
master's and
yeah,
I was applying to some PhDs, friends were going to PhDs, etc. And they were pushing the rhetoric and composition field for it because that's what
yes,
only thing that was getting, a tenure track higher in academia at the time in this field, specifically engineering is a different story, listeners, of course. But like, the humanities stuff, yeah, it's even that is falling off now because there was a rush 10 years ago for everybody's like,
right,
oh, we have to have a composition and rhetoric department. So they ran out and rushed to hire anybody who had a PhD in that. And now it's kind of falling away. Like, just like, and I'm sure there'll be
yeah,
another trend that'll come and they'll rush to hire something. So just, I always say if you're spending all that time and energy on it, just do it on something you want. Don't try to chase the market on it, even
yeah,
though the market's going to be bleak no matter what. It's pretty
exactly.
bleak right now. Yeah. Even my friends that got PhDs, most of them are not getting jobs. Most of them are not getting
No,
tenure
yeah,
track jobs.
yeah,
A couple are. You can get lucky, of course, if you're willing to move to the middle of nowhere in,
exactly.
America,
Mm,
somewhere, or even in the UK, middle of nowhere, some local college.
yeah,
But even they're kind of drying up. So yeah, there's that. I mean,
yeah,
I was just curious about, yeah, I like how you make that distinction between kind of the old, I think that's something that Americans tend to romanticize about European and Europeans in general is their kind of reverence toward their own history in a certain regard,
mm,
preservation of the Gothic
mm,
buildings, of the old libraries, understanding that like that's part of who they are. I mean, everybody makes jokes about the French doing this, of course, but
yeah,
like, there's just like I think that's what we like to romanticize about Europe is the
mm,
historical artifacts that they take seriously. We would like to take ourselves just as seriously in the kind of younger country, America over
yeah,
here with less history. But yeah, so that's always interesting where we tend to go trying to throw out the old and try to go towards the new here, which
yeah,
has its benefits. We tend to be innovative in that way, but then, you
mhm,
do lose that preservation aspect, that kind of small c conservation aspect of
right,
studying history. We're preserving historical
mhm,
texts. We need to make sure that there's archives. We need to make sure
mhm,
that there's, the climate controlled rooms if you want to preserve this physical
yes,
thing. Like it's just that is such a part of it that is undersung in maybe the American side of things that I was just thinking because that's interesting too. I had a
yeah,
British poet on and she lives in London, Sarah Fletcher, shout out to her. Go listen to that episode, listeners. And she was saying the same thing where she said she's noticed as she was getting her PhD she was saying that like there was a lot of import from America in terms of like cultural imports that like weren't
mm,
really British, like kind of this
yeah,
weird thing where she started noticing like, well, why are we talking about this? That's something Americans are preoccupied with,
mm,
like we're preoccupied with the classic study of literature and like kind
right,
of our history that we gave to America, I
right,
don't know.
right,
Just, I'm interested in everybody's takes on that, so I'm interested to
yeah,
see. Okay, the last couple questions here, Heather, are all craft writing questions we like to ask
okay,
all writers, and we get into the kind of details of, the physical work of this and stuff.
yeah.
What is your writing routine like? How do you like to do it?
Um, I I had to be honest. I knew that this question was coming when I started this podcast tour, and I thought like, should I have something more than I have, but I don't really have a routine. And that's really unhelpful for anyone that wants to write, I guess. But I think if a routine works for you, I think you have to just do what works, like the way that your brain works. Um, so I don't have a I write 2 hours a day at this time sort of thing. I have a sort of structure that I like to follow that helps me to write and helps me to finish pieces. But I'm not a structure, Stephen King with his famous structure from On Writing. I'm
Right.
not that kind of. I just if I have an idea, I write it down in my notes if I don't have my laptop. And honestly, if there's a deadline for a competition I want to submit to, that's when I'll write.
Interesting. Do you outline note taking? You said you do little jots downs. How do you like to prepare? Do you do elaborate outlines, just little notes? Do you piece things
Um,
together?
I'm not a
How
plotter, so I will always write my ending very early on. That's one thing that I do pretty much every time I write fiction. When I wrote the novel, the ending was like one of the first scenes that I wrote. All of the short fiction that I write, I always know the ending and usually write it first. Um, Other than that, I'm not much of a plotter, but I do think that when you have an ending, well, I think the ending is the most important part of a book. So I think it deserves a lot of attention. Uh, and I think in my mind, it's much easier to make my characters and the plot go in the direction that I want it to if I know the point that I want to end the story or the book on. So I always have my ending in mind. Um, I I always write down when people say weird things or funny things, because that's like where a lot of my ideas come from, just things that other people say. Like my life isn't that interesting or funny or weird, but people are often saying all kinds of strange things. So I write those down. And by reading, I get a lot of inspiration from reading.
Yeah. Do you like to handwrite or do you like to type? How do you even take those notes? Do you do
I
voice
type.
memos? What do you
No, I type.
phone notes app? Anything? Just
If I'm out and I want to remember a bit of something that someone said, I'll write it in my notes. If not, I'll just type writing a story. It's not very dark academia of me, like writing with a quill, but
I mean, I always, that's dead technologies that people like to romanticize. I like romanticizing things. I think we have a
mm,
lack of romanticizing things in our life right now.
yeah,
There's too much cynicism. But then I think of
yeah,
people like, that like George R. R. Martin or something refuses to write on anything but his like 1992 like electric word processor. And I'm just like, okay, dude, like, okay, that's you. That's a you problem now. All right,
well,
that's a
maybe
you
that's why
problem.
he hasn't finished the thing.
Yeah,
Like
well, one
maybe,
of many reasons. Yeah, but of
yeah,
course, when it's more difficult to print and delete and rewrite something
yeah,
because you're using a fucking green screen from 1992,
yeah. Oh my gosh,
I think it's just your problem here. You're being a little too
yeah,
stubborn. But that tech is
I would
dead.
agree. Yeah,
Electric typewriters, we don't need
yeah,
them anymore.
yeah,
Everything, it's like it'd be one thing if they were better. Like if I would like sat down at a typewriter and was like, "Oh, this is so much better," but it isn't. It's not even close. It's worse. It's harder to type faster. It's harder to do all that stuff. Like I'm like, we've
yeah.
perfected the keyboard. Okay, like in
Yeah,
this,
and it's easy.
uh,
The only problem is that
exactly.
it's very, very easy to get distracted on
Yeah.
a laptop. That
Yeah,
is
I've
like,
heard of
I'll have
some
a,
writers doing like air gapped laptops, so nothing, no internet
okay.
connection on laptops. I think
Mm.
Rachel Cusk or somebody had said
Oh,
that.
really? Huh.
Interesting. I mean, you have to kind of figure out what works for you, writers out there.
Yeah.
How you limit distractions. That could be an option if even if you
Hmm.
want to log on and scroll or something to
Yeah.
avoid doing the hard work. You're stuck on something you can't. So maybe that helps some people. Uh, I don't know. Yeah. Interesting how that works with the writing routines and stuff. But we just like to know these types of details. We
Yeah.
also like to know, and we don't need any numbers or anything. How do you make a living? Do you make any money off the literature? I know the book just came out, so probably not. But we like to ask this question because it's tough out there for writers. How do you make a
Hmm.
living? Do you make a living off the
Yeah.
writing?
So,
Academic stuff?
yeah. So I am almost certainly sure that I'm not going to make livable money from this novel. Um, but I'm not, I don't treat it as like
Right.
income because it's a small press and it's my first novel. You just can't depend on it
Right.
in any way. And I probably never will depend on writing novels for income. It's just
Right.
way too unpredictable. If it comes, it's great, but I don't think I'd ever see it as a real sort of like 9 to 5.
Right.
So I get my PhD stipend
Right.
and I teach as well. I love teaching, so I teach like undergrads at Oxford a lot. I tutor, like I do
Right.
college admissions stuff. So I do a couple of different things, mainly my PhD. Uh, but I never saw writing novels as like real income, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we asked it just to dissolve the illusion, yeah, that people
Yeah,
have out there, yeah, because it is rough out there, and that's what I was thinking is that, yeah, it's mostly, especially if you're a PhD student, it's probably the grad stipend that you're making a living
right.
because you got to do so much work and reading and writing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the benefit, listeners, of going to fully funded programs is where you actually
Yes.
get
Yeah.
paid to do your PhD and your master's work, but not everybody can get that, so I get it out there. It's just rough out there, so we like to
It
know.
is, yeah.
The other thing we like to ask is, are you reading anything good, watching anything good, listening to anything good? What's filling your head right now that you, and anything goes. This could be high-minded literary, this could be, trash reality TV. What's
Yeah.
filling Heather's head right now in terms of
Okay.
entertainment? And
I am the type of person I read like five different novels at once. Um, I don't know why. I don't really have like a psychological reason for that. It's just always have. Um, so I just finished Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth, which was a huge book like 2 or 3 years ago. It's very good literary, sort of horror, domestic literary fiction. But I'm also like, I'll read that and then have a huge hyperfixation on like self-published mafia romance. You know what I mean? Like I have very wide range.
yeah,
So I finished reading that. I'm also reading like Lord of the Rings. I'm on the third part for the first time. First time I've ever gone into Lord of the Rings. And then Love is Blind.
the American or the
Well, I watch every season, but
uh,
I'm currently watching the new American Love is Blind, which is really crazy. But I just love anything that people are acting in unhinged ways. I find it so entertaining.
yeah, it's almost a career path now for some of these people.
It really is.
My wife
Yeah,
and I watched 90 Day Fiance. That's like
yeah.
our one, and there is this kind of, I mean, one, I mean, these, yeah, it's great to watch things like that with a significant
Mm,
other because
yes.
then you just kind of like you get to make fun of all these people where you're just like,
Yeah.
huh, look at how terrible their relationship
I
is.
know. It makes you feel so good about
Yeah,
yourself.
like look at these disgusting losers. Like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
yeah. That's always good. But also, I mean, that is the majority of what people watch now, too. I mean, even
Yeah.
scripted prestige television, which I'm a fan of,
Yeah.
is kind of falling off. I mean, people aren't really interested. Even the big prestige ones on
Mhm.
HBO, like the big one that just finished with like Mark Ruffalo or whatever, it's good. It's great. It's the
What?
same. I think it's called like
Yeah.
I forget what it's called, honestly. See, I can't even remember it
Oh,
now, but
Severance.
no, it's the
No?
same guy that did Mayor of Easttown. It's like a crime
Mm,
drama. It begins with
I'm
an
not sure.
yeah, Stake or something, Stark
Yeah.
something. I don't
I
know
don't
what I'm
know.
talking
Yeah,
about.
the last one that I watched was Severance, the
Yeah.
last like really good TV show, and I
Prestige,
thought that
yeah.
was really good. Yeah, and what was the one? Succession, of
Hmm.
course, I really liked. But yeah, I think those shows are kind of becoming very infrequent as well now. A show that's really that good,
They're barely advertising the one I was just, that's the reason I brought it up. I can't
really.
even remember the
Yeah,
name of it because they're barely advertising it
yeah.
anywhere. I mean, like I hadn't seen a single advertisement and I follow a
Mm,
lot of that stuff. I'm interested in it. I like it. I'm somebody that
yeah.
views it. I even write reviews on it and stuff.
All right.
And it's just like I haven't seen anything about it. I'm like,
Mm,
how much money
yeah.
did you spend making this show? Because you're not really marketing like it at all.
Wow.
Interesting how that's playing out. Everybody would rather market the Instagrammable ones, I guess.
Yeah.
And the final question here, Heather, is always, what are you working on now? What's taking up your creative energy?
Yeah, I have a short story collection coming out next winter, so winter February 2026, which I'm editing and getting into the final stages now. I have ideas for my next novel, but I also need to focus on my dissertation.
Right.
I need to let that occupy my brain for a little while as well.
Are you doing the same publisher for your short story collection? Or are you doing a
Different
different publisher?
publisher, um, because my current publisher don't do short stories.
Right. Yeah. A
A
lot of them
similar
don't. Yeah.
publisher, yeah, a lot of them don't. Small, it's another small press called Serving House Books. So those are my short stories. There's 10 of them in the collection, I think. And then I'd love to get my second novel underway.
Yeah. Have you been given the kind of dire warnings of the many people that don't finish their dissertation and are like,
Yeah.
stuck in that
Yeah.
kind of, what do they call it? TBA or something,
Yeah.
TBD,
Every ABD,
ABD.
everything,
Yeah.
anything, something, everything but dissertation or something.
Yeah.
Um, I have, and yeah, I'm very aware of them, very aware that that is a possibility in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I'll finish. I'll put it out into the world. I'll finish the dissertation.
Yeah, yeah. And I know it's a huge thing, but then just always think, most people are not looking up graduate dissertations. Even if you become a great scholar after, most people are not
God,
looking up
no.
your,
I hope no one looks this
yeah.
up. 'Cause- yeah.
most people are not. They're on to the next thing. Nobody's lingering
Yeah.
over it usually. I had a friend say that when I was doing my, creative thesis for my MFA or
Mm.
whatever. He's like, okay, man, how many people are going to look back and be like, oh, well, my master's thesis, that was my
Yeah.
best work. Yeah,
Oh my
okay, no,
God,
it
no.
wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not. It's
No.
never the case that that's what
No,
happens. So.
no. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Heather, where can people find you? Website, social media handles? Where can people find your stuff? Where do you
Yeah.
want them to go?
My website is just my name, heathercolleyauthor.com, and that's also my Instagram. My TikTok is different. It's PhD with Paige, Paige. That's my middle name. So yeah.
All right, that's all linked below as well, listeners. Heather, this has been fantastic. Please come back anytime. We'd love to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great to meet you and to chat about all things literary.
Of course, yeah, please come back anytime.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile.
Resources.
Life, friends, is boring. We must not say so. Are you radioactive now?
Inner.
Resources, American resources.
Being bored,
Some activities are intentional, right?
it shows such a lack
Heavy.
of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom, I
Heavy.
should say.
Bored. Heavy.
I am heavy
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.
If you're hearing this, it's because you are listening to the free public feed of Heavy Board. To get complete, uncensored, uninterrupted, full access to this podcast, become a subscriber at patreon.com/heavyboard. That's right, Heavy Board is made possible by subscribers like you. For less than 1 cup of coffee per month, you will receive private access to uncensored, full-length episodes, Jerk Shop, heavy bonus content, subscribers-only AMA episodes, bonus extended interviews, and more. Come join the conversation today at patreon.com/heavyboard.